The Zephyrian War Council had convened for the last time. Admiral Kethavar's four eyes swept across the holographic display, showing their once mighty armada, now reduced to scattered debris floating in the void around the third planet of this unremarkable system. The humans called it Earth. How? The question escaped his vocal slits like a death rattle. How did a species that achieved spaceflight only centuries ago destroy the Crimson Legion? Commander Ythal, her carapace scarred from the failed orbital bombardment, clicked her mandibles nervously. Sir, our initial scans were incomplete. We assumed their primitive kinetic weapons and chemical propulsion indicated a weak civilization. We were wrong. The hologram flickered, showing the first day of what was supposed to be humanity's extinction. 12,000 Zephyrian vessels had descended upon Earth like a plague of metal locusts. Their plasma cannons had carved continents into glass. Their gravity bombs had pulled mountains into the sky before crushing them back down. Cities had been vaporized in seconds, but the humans hadn't surrendered. "Show me the Mariana Trench incident," Kethavar commanded, his voice barely above a whisper. The display shifted to the deepest part of Earth's oceans. The Zephyrians had thought it perfect for their underwater command post. 11 kilometers beneath the surface, protected by crushing pressure that would kill most species instantly. They had tunneled into the seabed, establishing a fortress that should have been impregnable. The humans had collapsed the entire Pacific shelf. They sacrificed their own continent, Ythal observed, her voice filled with something approaching awe. Half of their underwater cities were destroyed in the process, but they buried our 7th Fleet under 60 trillion tons of rock and sediment. Kethavar's claws scraped against the command console. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered 47 star systems. They had faced species with plasma technology, quantum computing, and dimensional manipulation. None had fought like this. The hologram showed the Antarctic campaign. The Legion had established mining operations on the southern continent, extracting the rare elements needed to fuel their war machine. The humans had somehow managed to detonate their planet's magnetic field. Generators, devices the Zephyrians hadn't even known existed until they created an artificial, magnetic pulse that sent every piece of Zephyrian technology within 3,000 kilometers spiraling into the frozen wasteland. "Sir," a junior officer's voice trembled through the comm system. "You need to see this." The display changed to show the orbital battle stations the Legion had positioned around Earth's moon. Massive constructs, each the size of a small city, bristling with enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. They had been humanity's death sentence, until the humans had turned their own moon into a weapon. They redirected 17 asteroids, the officer continued. "We traced the trajectory calculations. They had been planning this for months, maybe years before we even arrived. They knew we would position our stations there. They wanted us to." Kethavar watched in silence as the asteroids struck Luna with coordinated precision. The impacts had been calculated not just to destroy the battle stations, but to alter the moon's orbit by exactly 43 kilometers, just enough to create tidal chaos that swept away every coastal fortress the Legion had established. But it was the final battle that haunted him most. The Legion's last stand had been in Earth's stratosphere, where their remaining ships had formed a defensive grid around their flagship. They had been prepared for human fighters, for missiles, for electromagnetic warfare. They hadn't been prepared for the humans to weaponize their own atmosphere. "Replay the atmospheric ignition sequence," Kethavar ordered. The hologram showed it in terrible detail. Somehow the humans had seeded their upper atmosphere with combustible particles, a process that must have taken decades. When the Legion had tried to establish air superiority, the humans had ignited their own sky. The explosion had been visible from 3 star systems away. 12,000 ships, Kethavar whispered. The greatest armada in Zephyrian history, reduced to cosmic dust by a species that still uses fossil fuels for transportation. A communication alert chimed. The display showed a human face, weathered, scarred, with eyes that held no trace of mercy. Kethavar recognized him. General Chen Martinez, the architect of humanity's impossible victory. "This is Admiral Kethavar of the Zephyrian Legion," he said, his voice steady despite the horror of his situation. "I formally request terms of surrender." The human's expression didn't change. "There are no terms, Admiral. You came here to end us. Instead, you've taught us something valuable." "And what is that?" Martinez's smile was colder than the vacuum of space. "That we're not alone in the universe. And now we know exactly how to find the rest of you." The transmission cut to black, leaving Kethvar staring at his own reflection in the dead screen. Around Earth, the debris of the Crimson Legion formed a metal ring that would orbit the planet for millennia, a monument to Zephyrian arrogance and human determination. In the distance, he could see ships launching from Earth's surface. Human ships, crude and primitive by Zephyrian standards, but equipped with something far more dangerous than advanced technology: the absolute certainty that they would never stop fighting. The War Council chamber fell silent except for the steady beeping of life support systems running on emergency power. Admiral Kethvar closed all four of his eyes and tried not to think about what humanity would do when they reached the Zephyrian homeworld. The humans had been right about one thing: they weren't alone in the universe anymore. And now neither was anyone else.